Right, I know we've all done our complaining about UFC 300. We got the main event. It is what it is, but it's a good card. I'm still so conflicted and annoyed by it because when you look at it, it is destroying everything that is around it. Not just the contenders that are coming up, but everything around UFC 300 is getting ruined by this like black hole that it is sucking in all the talent. UFC 300 is like that crazy ex-girlfriend that you used to have, you know, like one night with it, amazing, blows your mind. But everything else around it is just like, why am I doing this to myself? So what got me all worked up about this, all right? Listen, I was listening to Michael Bisping, and I know my first mistake, but I was listening to Michael Bisping, and he was breaking down what would be next for Sean O'Malley, what would be next for Dustin Poirier. And we keep coming into this conversation of all the contenders are taken up by UFC 300. It has sucked dry all of the talent for the first quarter of the year. And we have some big matchups and some big matchmaking that needs to get done. And UFC 300 is just taking all of this in. It better be a damn good night. And with Bo Nickel on the main card, I don't know what the UFC are thinking. So one of the big things is this conversation about Dustin Poirier. Now, if you've been watching the channel for a bit, I'm a massive fan of Dustin Poirier. Love the bloke. Do I want to see him fight for the title next, straight away? Not right now. I don't think he deserves it right now, okay? We have Oliveira versus Arman Tsarukyan coming up, and whoever wins that matchup, if it is Oliveira, definitely deserves a shot at the title. If it's Arman Tsarukyan, it would be nice to see some fresh blood have a go at the lightweight title. I think we can all agree on that. I'm sure we are sick of seeing the same three guys fight essentially the same person. Islam is just Khabib plus striking. Do we want to keep seeing that rematch over and over again? And this is the thing, right? Even if it wasn't Oliveira or Tsarukyan, clearly a great number one contender, someone who's fought an up-and-comer, someone who has fought an old-school hardhead, is Justin Gaethje, okay? Justin Gaethje beat Rafael Fiziev. Justin Gaethje knocked out Dustin Poirier, the person that we're talking to have the next title shot in July, by the way. It should be Justin Gaethje, but Justin is taken up fighting Max Holloway. And what makes this even worse is Max Holloway could get very, very hurt in that fight. And we have a brand new featherweight champion, Ilia Topuria, who needs a contender who hasn't fought the number one ranked contender in that division, right? Max Holloway was as good as the champion. The only person that could beat Max Holloway was the previous champion, Alexander Volkanovski. And Ilia hasn't fought Max yet. This is the perfect next fight to make to keep Ilia busy. But Max Holloway is tied up. So you've got Alexander Volkanovski, who's out with two vicious knockouts in a row. He needs to have some time off, okay? Then you've got the number one contender, who is going to be fighting another division's number one contender, holding up two divisions, which usually isn't a problem, but we stagger the contenders across fight nights. So if this happens, there is someone else to fight. But Oliveira is also fighting on that same card. It is clogging up so much space. And then now you've got this new conversation of, well, we might as well make it O'Malley versus Ilia Topuria to keep Ilia Topuria busy. And this is literally what Bisping was saying. Bisping was saying, I don't hate that fight as long as they can do it quickly. Because there is this black hole void in the middle of the calendar that is UFC 300, there are considerations going on for essentially a super fight for Sean O'Malley when Merab Dvalishvili is right there. It's a great fight, right? Sean O'Malley versus Merab Dvalishvili is an amazing fight. But there is this talk of maybe we just move Sean up for now to keep Ilia Topuria busy. Now, look, as long as they do Merab versus Corey Sandhagen for an interim title shot on the exact same card, I don't hate that. I don't hate that fight. But what I do hate is what's happening at lightweight. All of the contenders are being backed up, and lightweight is so slow moving as it is, okay? Islam Makhachev just had Ramadan. If he does fight in July, they're going to want to book him again for the Abu Dhabi card later in the year. And it all depends on whether or not Islam gets really hurt in that fight, because we know the Dagestanis do not like to fight with injuries. They like to make sure that everything is 100% correct before they go forward and actually book a fight. And look, Dricus du Plessis is doing the exact same thing, so this ain't any sort of Dagestani hate. It's just the way that they have tended to book their fights in the past. So if we end up in July, right, and Dustin Poirier fights Islam Makhachev, and it isn't easy for Islam. He does go an injury, okay, or it is a bit of a war. He might get pushed back even past Abu Dhabi, which just leads to lightweight being even more slow moving. It just seems like we have a bit of a clog happening at lightweight and featherweight, and it is because of UFC 300 happening right there in the void. Then the next thing that UFC 300 seems to be sucking up is all the fight nights around it, okay? I am a goddamn hardcore fan of this sport. I look forward to the weeks ahead of me, to the end of the week, when the UFC's on at the end of the week, and I can take all of that frustration from work, and I can watch some people beat the living piss out of each other, okay? It's one of my copes. It just is what it is. But I'm looking forward to these fight nights. I'm looking ahead, and honestly, it's making me question my decision of being a UFC fan. What the hell is going on with these fight nights, right? Like, look at this weekend, okay? Look at this weekend. My boy Tai Tuivasa, he's an Aussie. I'm an Aussie. He knocks people out. He does shoeies. I love all of that, right? But why is he at the Apex? Okay, Tai Tuivasa, this fight with Tai Tuivasa should be the opening fight of a UFC pay-per-view. You know, that first fight of a UFC pay-per-view. Just bring out a name that all the casuals know, Tai Tuivasa. Maybe he gets a knockout, maybe he doesn't. He's definitely going to do a shoey at the end. He's going to play some absolute 90s banger for his walkout. It's going to get us all hyped. That's where Tai Tuivasa belongs. What is he doing in the Apex? Headlining a main event after we just had two fat heavyweights headline the Apex, and the main event was horrible. One of them literally gave up on the stool and just couldn't be bothered going back out there for the 5th round. We just had that happen to us, okay? And then after Tai Tuivasa, you've got Rose Namajunas as a main event. She is literally involved in one of the most boring fights in UFC history, and she is going to be the main event of a fight night card. Who made that decision? Who on God's green earth came up with that decision for a fight night card? And then the week after that, you've got another women's MMA main event. Why? You've given us 2 fat heavyweights in a row, and then 2 WMMA main events in a row, all leading up to UFC 300, because quite frankly, Dana is right. A majority of the fights on UFC 300 should be our main events for everything else. So UFC 300 better step up, because it has a lot to answer for. And then there's UFC 301, right? UFC 300 is the next pay-per-view, which means that we should have 301 announced for what it is. That's how the UFC media machine works. They're always getting you hyped up for the next fight. So 301 should be announced. It isn't. We are assuming it is Alexander Pantoja, but he hasn't even been confirmed yet as the main event or the co-main event. And we've seen the UFC do this before. They will name a main event, and then if it's not good enough, or if something else comes up, move it down to a co-main event. Like, are we really thinking? Are we really considering, are we really suggesting that the UFC is taking Alex Pereira's offer to fight at UFC 300 and 301 seriously? Because it feels like they are, without announcing anything for 301. It seriously feels like they are. And then are they waiting to see what happens between Charles Oliveira and Arman Tsarukyan, or what happens between Holloway and Gaethje, to see what happens for 302, to see who might be fighting Islam Makhachev? They might be, but look at this, right? If it is Gaethje or Oliveira, they are picking someone off a quick turnaround, someone who deserves to have the best opportunity they possibly can at a title shot. If it's Gaethje or Oliveira, they're on that back end of their career, right? Arman Tsarukyan, he can go in there a little bit rushed. He can lose, he can rebuild. It's hard. We just spoke about this. The UFC lightweight division is the hardest division in all of combat sports. So it's not fair for Arman. It's not fair for anyone to take that fight on less than ideal circumstances. But for Oliveira and Gaethje, they're never going to get a better shot. And Gaethje's already proved this when it was the Islam Makhachev versus Alexander Volkanovski. They offered it to Gaethje. Gaethje didn't want to step in on short notice. Gaethje knows he's only got one shot to win that title, and it's got to go down perfectly. Are the UFC trying to set up, remember what they did with Dricus du Plessis? It was a 6-week turnaround to go and fight Israel Adesanya, and Dricus was like, I'm not fighting compromise to try and win a UFC title. Is that what they're thinking might happen here with UFC 300? They've got literally all of their contenders at lightweight except for Dustin fighting on the same card. And are they going to offer them Islam Makhachev in July around UFC 302? And one of them might be coming in less than ideal circumstances, carrying injuries from UFC 300, or maybe just Dustin Poirier, someone who is cutting ahead of the line a bit, I feel like. It's just UFC 300 has got so much built on top of it that everything around it is kind of ruined. It just puts so much pressure on UFC 300's back. It better be a goddamn good night. If we're going to have that crazy night with the ex-girlfriend, it better be one hell of a wild night, because the hangover of everything that's going on around it, the coming down of everything that's going on around it, is going to hurt us for months, lads. For months. Let me know, who do you want to see fight Islam Makhachev next, or fight Ilia Topuria next? Put that down there in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, go ahead, hit that subscribe button. And of course, I will see you all in the next one.